I've had many leading experts on this show, including Matthew Walker, and they've all said the same thing about sleep. They've said it's the biggest positive investment you can make in your own performance. You can have the best strategy in the world, but if you're consistently tired, poor decision-making will follow and eventually cause other things to fail in your life. So if you're looking to optimize your recovery, you should start looking at what you're sleeping on. Our sponsor, Helix, makes high-quality mattresses tailored to your body. It doesn't matter if you run hot, sleep on your side, or need something firm. Helix has a mattress for you. And I asked them recently to send one to a member of my team, and Juan received it. And we travel a lot, so when he's home, quality sleep really matters. And he told me he's getting the best sleep of his life. And the data backs it up, with 82% of people in a Helix study saying they saw an increase in their deep sleep. And with a 120-night trial, you've got 4 months to prove it to yourself. You can get 27% off at helixsleep.com/diary. That's helixsleep.com/diary.
For the last couple of years, I've been working on something that I realized every podcaster listening to this, but actually probably every creator listening to this, might just need. Podcasting is difficult for many reasons. And one of them is that these hosting platforms don't give you much information. And also, because they're so fragmented, you kind of have to go through every single platform, uploading it to YouTube and then taking the same big old video file and uploading it to Spotify's platform. It takes huge amounts of time. And that friction means most of us don't do it. That is the problem we set out to solve. And so we built something called Flightcast, which you can find at flightcast.com. And today, Flightcast is also one of our show sponsors. And some of the world's biggest podcasters are now using our platform to run their shows because it gives you an edge. It saves you time. It gives you analytics most people won't typically get. It allows you to use AI to be more informed on your show. And it has growth tools that other hosting platforms don't have. So podcasters that are using Flightcast have this unfair advantage. So go to flightcast.com/DOAC now.
Why am I doing this? I'm doing this because society wants me to do this. I'm doing this because my mates want me to do this. This is bullshit. That's not going to happen. And I think you show that little boy inside who was just like ruined by it. Sorry, it's still quite emotional.
What an amazing story. What a cruel, amazing, twisting career. My next guest has one of the most fascinating journeys through business and through life that I think I've ever heard. She spent her life surrounded by a couple of people that I actually consider to be inspirations of mine. One of them is Sir Dave Brailsford, who's been the sort of elite performance coach and cycling coach for Team Sky, which went on to win more than they were ever expected to win. He's the author of this marginal gains thinking, which changed how business and sports teams function. The other person she was surrounded by throughout her career is Steve Peters, who a lot of you will know from the book he authored, The Chimp Paradox, which redefines from a psychiatrist's point of view how our mind works and where our behavior comes from. And the other male figure in her life that's important for the story you're about to hear is her brother, David Millar, who was this incredibly sort of highly regarded cyclist, British cyclist, who had this cruel twist to his career where he got involved in the doping scandal, which really left a stain on British cycling as we know it. And David Millar recounts this story of him being sat in this cafe shop with David Brailsford and being tapped on the shoulder by 3 men wearing suits who would then raid his house and find syringes. And that was one of the key moments in British sporting history where I think in many respects, things have never been the same. And we always view our elite performers with an element of skepticism. But this is Fran's story. And Fran's story is one of tenacity. It's one of success. It's one of jumping off cliffs and figuring out how to build your skydiver as you fall. Her story is inspiring. It's peculiar. She went from starting her own business to spending, I think, 12 years at Team Sky, worked her way up to the very, very top. And when it became Team INEOS, she became the CEO, leading a predominantly male-dominated industry. And then, out the blue, in the middle of a pandemic, when retail was on its arse, she decided that she was going to change lanes and become the CEO of Belstaff, which is a brand that has been struggling, that's been making losses, and then was kicked up the rear end by COVID. She's brave. She is unusual. She's inspiring. She's tough. She describes herself, or at least she respects the idea of being a difficult woman, something we'll talk about. So without further ado, I'm Stephen Bartlett, and this is The Diary of a CEO. I hope nobody is listening, but if you are, then please keep this to yourself. Fran, I've done a lot of stalking of your history, your past, your professional career. And I was stalking your Twitter feed the other day, and I saw a quote that you'd written, I guess, in honor of your brother, David, who is a world-renowned professional, incredibly accomplished cyclist. And the quote said, "Following a boy who loved it so much he got absorbed into the fabric of it and has spent a lifetime carrying the weight of the cruelty, wonder, brilliance and tragedy it would bring him, is ultimately what got you into the world of cycling." I was slightly taken aback by some of those words. Cruelty, wonder, brilliance and tragedy. Can you explain why you chose those words?
Oh, that's a big opening question. Yeah, I mean, listen, my brother was and is a very talented guy. When we were about 10 and 12, my parents got divorced. My dad went to live in Hong Kong and my mum stayed in the UK. I stayed with my mum, my brother went with my dad. And so when we were like kids, we'd cross in the air. So he'd come home from Hong Kong, he'd come home, I'd go out. And he had nothing to do when he was here because we'd moved. So he had no friends around. So my mum entered him into a cycling club. And he'd go and he'd do the time trials. He was super good at it. Literally from 15 to 19, he'd gone from never really riding a road bike to being courted by 9 of the biggest teams in the sport. And he got signed very young by a big French team. And they kind of made all these promises to my mum about it. And he was obviously, he was a kid. He was desperate to win the Tour de France and to go and fulfill his dreams. And he totally fell in love with the sport and he was completely enamored by it. And in the space of 5 years, he'd gone from this excited, talented, brilliant kid to this damaged, incredibly sad, deeply, deeply shamed young man. And it was like, how has a sport done that? Like, how is it's a game, right? Like sport's a game, it's entertainment. How is it something that is fundamentally to entertain people basically ruined him, like taking him down to the core of who he was? And then he built himself back up and he's gone on to do incredible things. But it was just the sport has had this unbelievable impact on my life, on my brother's life, on my life, on everything, the decisions I made and everything else. So I guess that's why I chose those words.
Give me some detail on, you talked about the sport bringing him down to his core and ruining him. What caused that?
So he went into the sport in 1998. He turned pro, which for any of your listeners who know anything about cycling was the Festina year. So it was the year of the big Festina scandal where they raided all the hotel rooms and the guys all kind of protested and sat down on the road. And only a few of the sort of teams were able to finish because so many guys got pulled out of the race. And it was the dawning of the EPO era. So it was the era where they discovered effectively, athletes and coaches had discovered that you could use EPO in the same way that you used to be able to use altitude training to increase physical performance. And it was just a transformative drug. They couldn't detect it. They couldn't test for it. They brought in some interventions like a hematocrit test. So if your hematocrit went over 50, you'd be pulled out of racing, but it was a health check. It wasn't a doping check. And it was rife, basically. So when this young sort of dreaming kid went into the sport, he genuinely thought you could do it clean. You wouldn't ever have to cheat. I don't even think he really knew that much about doping at that point in his life. And pretty quickly, he realized that actually most of the guys at the very top were doping, that the doping was endemic, that the expectation was you would dope, that was what you would need to do if you wanted to be a professional and you wanted to be any good. And he resisted it for a really long time. Like he was a time trialer, which is, race against the clock. You basically only racing yourself. And so he really stuck to his time trialing because he was like, I can do that like with the technology, with aerodynamics, with focus on my training. It's a shorter period of time. There's less requirement to kind of be as cardiovascularly supreme as the guys who are trying to win the Tour are. And so he did very, very well time trialing, went to his first Tour de France and won yellow like day one. But what was happening was behind the scenes, this sort of erosion of his belief that he would be able to do it clean, his recognition that actually if he really wanted to take it seriously and try and win the Tour, he was going to have to cheat. The people around him, the kind of network and the sort of framework around him was people who weren't looking out for him, weren't thinking what's best for him, weren't trying to work out how to help him fulfill his potential. They were trying to work out how to get him good enough to make enough money to win, for them as a business. He was a commodity in their business. And I haven't actually ever told this story, but Francois Migraine, who owned Cofidis, which is like a company that basically does telephone loans. I don't know what they do now, probably, online loans, but he met my mum. So when we had all these teams that were sort of courting David, he met with my mum and he promised her that he would look after him, looked her in the eyes and said, I'll look after him. And yet he did nothing. Like he built a team that was allowed to just get on with it. He sort of closed his eyes to it. And actually, when the big investigation into Cofidis started, it was Francois Migraine who effectively called out my brother. He was like, I think Moncoutier is probably clean, but David Millar, I wouldn't put my hand on my heart for him.
Really?
And it was like, you motherfucker. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And he's 24 years old. Like, what? He's the only exposure he's had to the professional sport is your team. So if that's what's happened, it's your team and your people. Don't get me wrong, David absolutely has to take responsibility for his decisions in that. Mm-hmm. But I, for one, know that when I was like 19 to 25, I wasn't making the best decisions I've made in my life. Do you know what I mean? And I had some influential people around me who, had they told me to do things, and it's that insidious thing, isn't it? It's a bit like I was listening to a book the other day about decision making, and how if you look at like Nazi Germany and people say, oh, they were just following orders. And there was this big study done apparently where they put people in a room and they told them like, there's going to be a student in there. It's a study. Can't remember. I think it was Magran or someone who did the study. And you're going to press this button. Don't worry, because to shock them. Yeah. And the shock's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's like, and 65% of the people would have pressed the button that would have effectively killed the person in the other room. Mm-hmm. And it's like, what? And that's the human condition, right? So this idea that we would make a better decision, or that we'd make a better choice, or that we'd do it differently. People seem to impose that on guys who decide to cheat in sport, decide to make these decisions. Like, well, how dare you make that decision? It's like, if you're in an environment and a culture where that becomes the norm, where that becomes what people do, this idea that you're going to be the one person who, and don't get me wrong, I know there are other people who do that, and fair play to them. That's impressive, that you've been brought up in a certain way to enable you to make those decisions. But David was fragile. He was impressionable. He was a dreamer. He was doing something he'd always wanted to do. He was passionate and desperate to be a success. Mm-hmm. And I think he just got taken down the wrong path, And
do you feel like you went through that with him as a close family? I'm trying to understand the impact it had on you being the sister. And I know you guys are very close.
Yeah. I mean, the impact it had on me was he went to my mum and told her that he was doping, and they sort of, she just said, well, just stop, just come home. Like, don't worry about it. Sort of at the very beginning, he said, there's a lot of drugs. And my mum was like, well, just come home, go to art school. Don't worry about it. It's just cycling. And yet he stayed and he persisted. And then I think when in 2001, when he eventually made the decision to kind of cross the line, as it were, he spoke to my mum, I think, in that period. And she was just like, you have to stop, you have to come home. And he was a bit like, no, I want to do, I want to be successful. I want to go on this journey. He never had that conversation with me. All I ever saw was it was like an erosion of him. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I could tell something was going on. I wasn't an idiot. Do you know what I mean? It's like, he's probably cheating. But we had all been indoctrinated into it as well. It was like, well, that's kind of, you turn a blind eye. You kind of think, well, he's doing really well. He's, on the cover of all the magazines. He seems happy-ish. Mm-hmm. And it was only when he'd come home in the off season and he'd come and stay with me and my mates living in London. And he would drink so heavily that you'd be like, okay, this isn't normal. You're a professional athlete. And the depressions he'd sink into and the self-loathing that would come out. And it's like in vino veritas, that kind of this. And I'd be like, what on earth is going on here? And then eventually I realized what was happening, and I kind of felt responsible for never stepping in and saying something and never being like, you don't need to do this. I was just like, well, if you're happy and you're enjoying it and you're doing well, who am I to judge, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I think as a family, it kind of bonded and pulled us apart. Like we all turned a blind eye to it. I think we've all got our demons to deal with from that perspective. Sure. My dad, I think, had a very different view of it all. My brother and my dad sort of, have an ongoing difficult relationship. My mum and my brother are very close. I'm very close to my dad and my mum. But, so as a family, we've kind of, it's definitely created divisions because everyone had a different view of it. And then in terms of the impact on me, I went into cycling. I ran my own cycling agency. I was working in the cycling industry. I totally rode the coattails of my brother's success. And I was like, shit, okay, now it's all going to come crashing down. Like, he got arrested and put in prison. And, you know, I was like, oh God, this is not ideal. And I literally remember speaking to him afterwards, and he'd just come out of, you know, the 48 hours in custody. And he was like, and I remember it being like a week and a half before the tour. And he said to me, don't worry, France, they're still going to let me ride the tour. You know, you're like, oh, it still makes me want to cry. Because it's like, David, they're not going to let you ride the tour. That's not going to happen. And I think you show that little boy inside that was just like ruined by it. Mm-hmm. Sorry, it's still quite emotional. But yeah, so it just impacted everything. It impacted all my decisions. Because at that point I was then like, shit, now I've got to go into the office the next day, and I've got to stand in the velodrome at events. And I'm not David Millar's sister, the kind of glory front cover of the magazine. I'm the sister of this shamed, cheating, lying, horrible human being who no one likes anymore, and who has disgraced British cycling and is a, you know, he's like a complete social pariah. And I'm like, oh shit, okay, now I've still got to go and do my job.
And did you feel that from people? Massive. You felt the judgment and...
Yeah, massively. People were and it was in the days of forums, you know, like when forums were a really big deal. Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, okay, I'm just going to go and have a little bit of a look on a forum and see what people are saying. And I'd see people I work with commenting, you know, people who were at the velodrome who were like doing the timing at my events, and they all, you know, literally like people wishing him dead. But, you know, it was just like, it wasn't cool. And I really felt it. I felt it for him. I wasn't embarrassed, because I was like, you know, it is what it is. He's made a set of decisions. He's paying the price for it. But it was at that point, sort of about 6 months after that I was like, okay, I probably can't represent him anymore, because if I have to have another conversation with a journalist, an ignorant journalist, about this kind of binary right or wrong conversation where you're like, it's just not how life works, mm-hmm. I'm going to end up punching someone in the face. So I should probably stop doing that.
Speaking of punching people in the face, I heard you... No.
I was going to say.
No, I heard... It just felt like a good turn towards one of the things that I saw you share online, which was this article about being a difficult woman. And the importance of dispelling this sort of like niceness aura that women typically are associated with in business, that I think the article was suggesting holds them back. Mm. How important has that been, especially, you know, when you were dealing in an industry which is pretty much full of men, and you got to the very, very top as the CEO of INEOS? How important was it to be willing to punch people in the face, being a little bit difficult at times?
As is such an interesting question, because that whole being a difficult woman, I think, is, the older I've gotten, the more I've kind of explored feminism and explored kind of this sort of female condition, the human condition. It's like women are judged very differently for behaviors that in men would be seen as completely normal. So, you know, there's the sort of famous kind of meme that's the sort of, you know, men are assertive, women are chippy, you know, men are confident, women are arrogant. You know, it's like the same behavior gets viewed very differently through a very different lens. I've never filtered myself. It's not been, anyone who's ever met me knows that I don't really come with a filter. And I think it's really, really important that young women recognize that they don't have to apply a filter. You don't have to be the quiet one in the room. You don't have to. I remember reading Sheryl Sandberg's book about Lean In, and it was like, you know, when young women will come into a meeting room and they won't sit at the table. Like, they physically won't sit at the table. They'll sit like at the sides. And I was like, fuck off, who does that? And then I would go to meetings and I'd be like, I'd noticed that like the 19, 20, 21-year-old younger women in the room, they'd wait for the guys to sit down. They'd be like, what the fuck are people, why are people doing that? Mm. And until you realize it's happening, you don't realize it's happening. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I've always felt quite strongly that you just need to be yourself, be confident, be willing to get told you're a bitch, get told you're, and don't get me wrong, when I was younger, I was actually a bit of a bitch. I probably didn't measure that behavior. I was a bit like, well, it's just who I am and everyone needs to suck that up. And actually, you still have to be polite and have manners, and you still have to recognize that being aggressive is actually just sometimes being aggressive. It's not being assertive. Yeah. And that balance, I think I've learned as I've got older. But I think I think women are judged totally differently for behaviors that men would be absolutely, it would almost be sort of respected in a man for certain behaviors. Mm-hmm. And in a woman, it's reviled.
there'll be young women listening to this and they'll be thinking, do you know what? I'd love to be like that, Fran, and I'd love to be a bit more, assertive and et cetera, but I just, it's just not who I am. And so kind of the question that popped into my mind was, where did that, some might see it as confidence, but it's like a confidence in being your true self, right? Do you know where that came from in you? Was it, is it experience? Is it something that happened in the household? Is it your mother taught you that behavior? Your father?
Yeah, I think it's probably half nature, half nurture. Like I think I my mum tells a story about when I was little and I'd just literally go off and speak to people. Like she'd be sat at, the bar, on a holiday, and she'd want to know what's going on with a couple over there. She'd be like, Francis, go and ask them what they're doing. And I'd be like, okay. And off I'd go and chat to them. So I think I've always been very innately confident, and that's never gone away. But equally, I think I've been very lucky. I've been very blessed. I've worked with people and in and around people where I've been allowed to be myself. I've been allowed to kind of grow up and make mistakes and fail and be a bit of an idiot and get told you're being a bit of an idiot, and not have that be a judgment upon me and limit me. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really interesting that kind of, being assertive or being your true self has become a bigger and bigger thing that people talk about. And actually being your true self doesn't mean you have to be assertive and confident. It means you have to be your true self.
Yeah, yeah.
And for a lot of people, that is a bit more insecure, a bit more, and that's fine. You can bring that to the table. You can be an emotional person. You can lack a bit of self-esteem and just be honest about that. So for me, I think it's just partially how I was brought up, but more the people I have been surrounded by on the journey of my life and career. I've been incredibly blessed that they have allowed me to make a lot of mistakes and course correct me as I've gone on.
That point about being assertive and being direct and being open and honest, I was actually chatting yesterday about one of how I've changed over the last 10 years, from like the kid at 18 to the kid at 28. And the key thing I said to my team was like, the big change that I've seen in myself is I'm way more direct.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why I'm doing that. I'm like, I don't know whether it's because I've got so many things to do that I'm trying to save time at all times. I'm way more honest with my feedback. And there's this sort of fine line between being an asshole and being honest and direct and trying to be time efficient, and like realizing that sometimes your feedback or the way you say things might hurt people's feelings, but that's secondary to what we're doing here. How have you towed that line? I imagine from what you've said, it's more difficult as a woman to because people will, they'll determine the same behavior to be a really negative thing. But how do you toe the line between being like direct and firm, which is so important in my opinion when you're dealing with teams, and especially if you're dealing with teams of high testosterone men? How do you toe that line? And also, I guess the more important question for me is, do you agree that it's an important trait to have?
Okay, so have you read a book called Radical Candor?
It's up there on my bookshelf somewhere, but I've not read it yet.
Okay, so yes, I do think being honest is important. I think being a dickhead to people is not acceptable. And so I think honesty can get veiled. Sorry, being a dickhead can get veiled by I'm being honest, right? Like, well, I'm just being honest. And it's feedback and you should take it. It's like one of the sort of best lessons I've ever been taught, and one of the most influential people in my life by a mile is Steve Peters, who's a forensic psychiatrist.
Yeah.
And he always says, like, you have to be compassionate. Like, even if you're telling someone they're losing their job, or, if you're having to give someone really honest, be compassionate, be sensitive to the fact that you're going to get a better response from someone if you're just nice to them. You can say some really, really shitty things to people and it get a horrible response, or you can say shitty things but get a really positive response back because you do it in a different way. So I think it's really crucial to be honest. It's really crucial to be authentic, but that doesn't mean you get a license to be a dickhead.
Mm-hmm. And is there a place for aggression and anger and being annoyed in business in your view?
No.
Not ever.
Well, you can feel those things, but I don't think you can inflict those things on other people. No, I don't think that's acceptable.
It's remarkable how many of the world's most sort of admired leaders, when you read their biographies and stuff, you find out how much of a dickhead they are. Like Steve Jobs was a good example where I was told, from a friend that they basically had to put him in his own building and warn people that worked in that building that, the way Steve was. And Elon Musk in his biography is very, very similar. But
the reason I asked you about Radical Candor is when I read it, it made a lot of sense to me about people like that. So that she basically describes this quadrant where effectively you've got how much you care about people and how sort of willing and honest you're able to be. And so if you're very, very honest, but you don't care about them at all, then you're basically an arrogant arsehole. And if you really, really care about them, but you're really, really honest, then you're radically candid. But if you really, really care about them and you're not honest, then you're kind of, it's almost like a malignant empathy. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to be really nice to you, but because I'm not going to be honest with you, you're not going to develop. And so that for the first time, and she said in a business, it's better, it's way better, as much as it's counterintuitive, to be the arrogant arsehole, because actually the feedback is what's important. So if people are getting the feedback, if they're being told the truth, they are like, some people might not be able to handle it, but the people who can handle it will develop and get better. So it's worse to be empathetic and not be honest than it is to be an arrogant arsehole. And I was like, oh, that's why there's so many arrogant arseholes in the world. Because actually it does work. Like and genius, it forgives a lot, right? When people are geniuses, they can behave very differently and they get away with it because they're geniuses. And there is merit in that. And I think if people are very, very, very honest with you and give you brutal feedback, as long as you're like able to take it on board, you'll get better. But if someone's lying to you and saying, you're doing a great job, Stephen, don't worry about it, it's absolutely fine, because they don't want to hurt your feelings, you're never going to develop.
It's true. You switched from working at INEOS over to Belstaff quite relatively recently. And I was reading, I was listening to one of the podcasts you'd done, and you talked about how you'd worked in cycling pretty much your whole life. It was pretty much your everything in terms of your professional experience. I've also recently quit my job. And
how does it feel?
Everything. You feel everything, right? You feel, it's bittersweet. You feel excited. On one hand, you're unsure about the future, but I trust myself enough to know that I'll figure it out, because I always have. But yeah, all feelings. I guess my question for you is, and the bit that I found particularly interesting is, people will do a thing for 10 years, for 5 years, whatever, and then they'll tell themselves that they are that thing. They'll like give themselves the label, I work in cycling, I'm a cycling person.
Yeah.
It seems to be incredibly difficult, especially if they've been in that industry for a long time, to then take on a different label. You're now working in fashion and with a whole new set of challenges, completely outside of your comfort zone to some extent, in some ways. How did you make that switch? How did it feel? Tell me all about it.
It's, again, I'm going to reference Steve Peters, but I remember, because I was so wedded to my job in cycling. Like, I lived and breathed it. I loved it. I cared deeply about the people. It was so wrapped up in my identity, but I hadn't necessarily got a huge amount of satisfaction out of the job over the last 2 or 3 years for a whole host of reasons, nothing to do with the team, just personal development wise. And every time I spoke to Steve, he'd be like, well, then why don't you just leave? I'd be like, because I don't know who I am if I leave the cycling team. Do you know what I mean? And that was always a much longer conversation than that. But what effectively I was saying was, I don't know who I am if I'm not that. And he said over and over again, you will be whoever you go on to be. That's not going to change. You are still there. You're letting this thing influence all these views about yourself. You're letting it influence what your value, your worth, your sort of substance, your contribution to life. Like you're letting, it's a job. He's like, it's a job. And I was like, you don't get it. You don't understand. It's more important than that. And you know what? When I got asked to go and do Belstaff and I left, and it broke my heart, like I cried my eyes out. And I started at Belstaff, and I feel awful saying this, but within 48 hours, I was like, oh my God, I love it here. And I love the people here. And this is brilliant. I'm so excited. And actually, it is just a job. That was just a job. And yes, I miss it. And yes, it was incredible. And yes, I loved the people, and I still love the people, but it's just a job. It's not my family. It's not who I am. It's not my identity. It's just a part of my life. And I'll be eternally grateful for having done it. But now I've got a new challenge. And I was like, I'm really pleased I did it when I did, because everyone, I think, had been saying to me for a long time, once you leave, you'll be like, oh, I should have done this 5 years ago. And I don't feel like that at all. I feel, I did that for the right amount of time. I loved it. I've banked it, moving on to something else.
And it's that point there about thinking that that job was your identity that I think really like holds people down.
Yeah.
Because you're right, jobs are their friends, their community, they are purpose, they're, as you say, they're your identity.
And that's dangerous.
Really dangerous.
That's dangerous, because actually they're not you, they're not your identity. And no matter how much you love it, no matter how passionate you are about it, and this would be the lesson I would sort of give to myself, the sort of, it doesn't matter, it's a job. You're being paid to do it, it's a job. And I would have railed against that even a year ago. Like, no, it isn't. It's more important than that. And as soon as I left, I was like, And my brother always used to say to me, your team aren't your family. Your team aren't your family. And I never really understood what he meant because I was like, well, they are my family. Like, you know what I mean? I love them. They are my family. And then you leave me like, oh no, what he means is your family are there forever. Your family are wedded and you can't unpick your family. There's something whereas when you leave a job, you take away the memories, you take away the happy times, you take away the good stuff, but the fabric of who you are doesn't change.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I try and do. I just finished writing my book there's a chapter on this idea of labels and me trying to resist these labels to make sure that I continue on my journey of challenge, keep myself, stimulated, and I don't get to, a certain age and feel like I'm having a midlife crisis because I don't know who I am and I can't leave and I don't have any new skills. And to really sort of realize that the label I have is me. It's like Stephen. I'm a guy with a bunch of skills and experiences, and I can apply these skills and experiences to a bunch of different challenges. I'm not social media CEO. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that I find really liberating. So I quit. I started DJing. We're doing this, putting on this theatrical play. I'm just trying to do all of the things that I think I shouldn't be able to do, right?
Yeah.
But speak to me about the challenge. So you decide to take this job at Belstaff. And it is a big challenge. It's widely reported that Belstaff had struggled across the years. It was acquired in, I think, 2017.
Yeah.
It was making losses then, and the losses have, I think, narrowed over the last couple of years to some extent. But it's a big challenge, right? Mm-hmm. A big challenge. It would have been much easier to take a different job.
So first and foremost, I didn't take it. I literally had a conversation with my chairman at INEOS about, maybe over the next couple of years, I want to think about moving on and doing something different. And when Dave B comes back from the tour, this was in September. So when he comes back from the tour at the end of the season, I think I'd like to sit down and have a chat with my chairman and my boss, Dave, about my future. That was the sum total of my conversation. And literally a week later, I got a call saying, Jim would like you to be the CEO of Belstaff. And, with the best will in the world, when Jim Ratcliffe asks you to do something, you don't kind of go, let me have a think about that. And I just thought, okay, well, what an opportunity. And I went for it. But I wasn't looking to change. I hadn't planned to move on. So that was, in some ways, whilst it was quite traumatic, the sort of 3 or 4 weeks of, because I got phoned on the 16th of September and I was in role on the 1st of October.
Wow.
So it was 2 weeks of just.
Why did you want to have the conversation though when Dave got back?
Because I'd sort of been thinking, like I said, about the conversation with Steve about I'm not sure if I'm happy doing this job anymore and not sure if I'm fulfilled. I'd kind of reached the point sort of middle of last year where I was thinking, you know what, I do need to start thinking about my future and my life and my career. And I don't know whether that's always going to be in cycling. And I don't know whether this CEO of the cycling team is 100% what I want. So I wanted to speak to my chairman first to kind of sound him out. And then when Dave gets back from racing, so I didn't want to interfere with the racing, have a conversation about my future. So I just literally put it on the radar of the chairman. And probably a little bit out of frustration for myself as well. I was a bit I want to feel like I'm moving this on because otherwise I'm going to sit and not do anything with it. Do you know what I mean?
Did you feel stagnant in the role? Is that the crux of what you're getting at? What was trying to see if I can relate.
I felt, so I had done what is effectively 20 years in pro cycling. It, like you say, it was all I knew. It's all I'd done. I know everybody in it pretty much. I've been in and around it my whole life. I'm David Miller's little sister. It's part of my DNA. And I loved being part of Team Sky. We did that for 10 years. And it was, I sort of always used to say, cut me in the middle, I'd bleed blue. And I absolutely loved it. And then when Sky said they were out at the end of 2018, I was like, right, I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm not going to do this anymore. Went straight to Dave B. I was like, it's been amazing. I've loved it. But once the team stops being Sky, I'm going to go. And he was like, okay, cool. I don't think he believed me, but he was like, okay, cool. And then he said to me, look, would you help at least find a new sponsor? Let's see if we can find a new sponsor. He's a bugger like that. So I was like, okay, I'll try and help you find a new sponsor and then I'll move on. And then, February comes 2019, he meets Jim. Jim decides that he wants to acquire the team. Jim's arguably one of the most successful businessmen in the world. Mm-hmm. We went and met with him and talked about, the design of the kit and everything else. And I was like, I'm going to get sucked into this shit. And then one of the other senior managers in the team decided to leave and go and work for another team. And Dave B was like, would you stay? You can be CEO, which was what I really wanted to be. It's a massive opportunity. And I was like, okay, I'll stay. And I think that was the point of the decision there, that I was like, this is a big career decision for me that I'm staying again. I told all my mates I was going to leave. I was like, this is it. This time I'm going. They're like, okay, Fran. And so I stayed at INEOS and then we worked on the 159 project. So Eliud Kipchoge's sub 2 hour marathon. And Dave obviously was the project lead on it all. He was the CEO, my boss. But he very sadly got prostate cancer in that period. So he was off doing the Tour de France. Then he had to go and have surgery. And so I took on like a deputy CEO role, kind of delivering the sort of vision that he'd come up with. And he'd structured all the performance team, but then I was doing the delivery of the event, everything from kind of working with the London Marathon team to supporting the performance guys to doing all of the engagement piece and everything else. And I loved it. As I felt like I was working 18 hours a day for like what was about 5-6 weeks in the build up to the, first of all, the test event and then through into the actual event. Mm-hmm. And I just loved it. Totally different, totally new challenge, new people, different approach, fresh. I was on literally cloud nine. I couldn't have loved it more. And I was working so hard. Like I was literally crippled by it, but I loved it. And I came out the other side of it, not so much just because we'd done it. Obviously, I mean, that was incredible, but it just really made me realize that I was just going through the motions in the cycling job. I was ticking over. I was really comfortable. I was good at it. I loved it. I was happy. I liked the people, but I wasn't growing. I wasn't developing. I wasn't learning new stuff. And I wasn't and I'd been going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, sort of in the team, like on all these stuff where I was helping other people develop and helping other people achieve their potential and helping other people kind of, rescue their reputations or enhance their reputations. And I was a bit like, what do I want to be doing? Like, why am I'm not, none of this has been about me. And even actually cycling is a little bit about David. Do you know what I mean? I was on kind of this journey to this sort of save young British talent from going through what David went through. And it's like, actually, what do I want to do? Maybe I want to do something different. And that just planted a seed, really. And I think I probably went and spoke to the chairman. If I'm honest, I went because I thought, I want to go and do something different. I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to do something that's not this anymore. And it was almost like a kind of involuntary. I think everything else about me was like, just stay because it's comfortable and it's easy and you get good money and it's, nothing bad's going to happen. But my soul was like, you've got to go and do something else now. And it was literally like in the space of 2 weeks, it was like, boom, I'm out of here.
So it was that almost identical to me in the sense of something niggling at you. And then for me, there was like a trigger moment where I was like, send an email. Yeah. And then you send it like, well, fuck. And then, but that idea of being able to throw yourself into uncertainty, it's like throwing yourself off a cliff when you were like cushy in the house on the side of the cliff and you're just like, oh my God, I'm going to jump. And you're throwing yourself off into the unknown in the hope that so you'll build your glider as you fall and then land somewhere better. And a lot of people can't do that. Like most people can't do that.
How did you feel though about, because I found it really traumatic. Like I felt like, first of all, I felt quite out of control. It was like, I'm out of control of this now. Mm-hmm. I literally said goodbye to my team who I'd worked with for 10 years and got on a train, woke up the next day and went into Belstaff and like, hi, I'm your new CEO. Yeah. And the trauma of kind of all of it felt I had to move out my house. I had to go and say goodbye to people, have a different email. I had the same email my whole life. Do you know what I mean? It's like all that kind of stuff. It just shouldn't be that important, but felt really significant. How did you feel? Did you find it traumatic or not?
So I'd quit a business that was my baby as well. I started a business at 18, quit that one when I was 21. So I'd been through it once before. So when I said the key thing for me was trusting myself. I've done this before. I know the feelings. I know that I don't know what my future holds. But when I did that when I was 21, it led to this even bigger business that was 200 times bigger and 200 times more successful. So that's been this guiding thing in my life. Like I dropped out of university after one lecture and it worked out. So when you have those case studies, you think, do you know what? I have no idea what the future holds, but I'll back myself to figure it out now. And that's because I'd done it like 3 times before. So I imagine the next time in the future, if ever, that you decide to jump ship from Belstaff or whatever, you'll have that case study or that evidence in yourself that you've been.
Yeah.
And that I think will calm you a little bit. The first time I quit, I was all kinds of emotions and worry and not sure what I was now and all those things. Yeah. But slightly easier the third time. I'm a bit of a prolific quitter. I think it's a really underrated skill.
Yeah.
People talk a lot about starting as if it's the be all and end all of success, but quitting is the thing you do right before, right? You start something new. So I was reading about this winning behaviours role you took on, which is a very curious title.
Yes, it is.
What was your remit as the head of winning behaviours at Team INEOS?
So it was when it was Team Sky, but same. So basically 2010, we first started racing. We'd started the team we sort of begun the journey of starting the team in 2008 off the back of the Beijing Games. Started racing in 2010. We were shit, like embarrassingly shit. And we'd been like smoke and mirrors and like, we had the big bus and we had all the money and we were sponsored by Sky and it's like, oh, we're going to be amazing. And we were rubbish. So we totally reset everything. And Dave B, to be fair to him, he's like a master of, okay, we're going this way. It's not working. We're going somewhere else. Like he's incredible at it. And so he totally shifted the way that we're going to run the team. We took a totally different approach. We started to be very successful in 2011. We'd obviously set the objective when we announced the team that we were going to try and win the Tour de France with a clean British rider in 5 years. And that was in start of 2010. Bradley won the Tour in 2012. So within the space of 3 years, effectively, we'd done it. The following year, Chris Froome won it. And we had gone from being this team that was like on a mission, like heads down, asses up, and we were going, like nothing was going to stop us. We were full on. And so when people sign up to that, people are signing contracts in 2010 with a team that doesn't exist, that has never raced on the road before, that comes from a track background, that's full of Brits who aren't historically that famous for road cycling. They were signing a kind of, they were adventurers, right? They were like these bold, ambitious, this is a bit batshit crazy, but we'll do it. When people were signing contracts at the end of 2013, they were signing with a team that had won the Tour de France twice, that was arguably the most dominant team in the sport, that had gone on, sort of achieved these incredible feats. And they had a different expectation of what they were joining to what we were. And we sort of suddenly realized that actually, if we were serious about continuing to be successful, codifying what had got us where we were was going to be crucial. And we'd also seen, for those of your listeners who are cycling fans, we'd had the Bradley Wiggins and Chris Froome's kind of divide. So Brad had obviously come first in 2012, but Froome had come second. Bradley never rode the Tour again. So Bradley didn't ride in 2013. Froome did, and he went on to win. And you started to see this divide in the team where it's like, well, I'm Team Bradley or I'm Team Froome. And it's like, well, no, check your paycheck, your Team Sky. And that kind of actually, who are we? What do we stand for? What do we expect from people? What do we need to be able to do to be the best in the world at this? Needed codifying, and it needed a way of a sort of charter almost to tell people this is how you're going to have to do this. And really, it was about eradicating losing behavior. It was about saying to people, bitching, backstabbing, saying you're Team Froome or you're Team Brad, or, criticizing people behind their back or whatever. That's not acceptable. But being head of losing behavior would have been shit. So we called it losing behavior. So it was all about creating a set of behaviors for the organization that enabled us to say to people, this is what it means to put this jersey on. This is what it means to be a part of this team. It's not just about, the glory and the winning. This is hard graft. This is, it was arguably the hardest thing I've ever done, working in that environment. It is unrelenting. It's brilliant and it's amazing and incredibly good fun, but it's hard work. And you've got to go all in. This isn't for the faint-hearted. And so the whole winning behaviors thing was about creating an environment where we could give people the parameters that we expected them to live by, but also ensure that they felt supported, safe, able to deliver their very best in an environment that is actually very high pressure. So that was my job, effectively helping Dave create the behaviors in the first instance with the whole team, and then helping keep them alive within the business.
What were some of those? You mentioned a couple of them there about not being a backstabber and understanding the importance of hard work. What were some of the other? Let's just focus on losing behaviors. Some of the traits or some of the threats to success that you'd see in the team. I'm thinking this from an organizational standpoint as like someone that's worked in business.
So we separated them into 5 different areas. We had self, team, communication, continuous improvement, and what was the other one? Oh, it's gone. Anyway, quickly, how quickly you move on, right? But so they were, self was all about identifying your own emotions, managing your own emotions, being in control of your own emotions. So a losing behavior of that would be losing your shit, being aggressive and arrogant with people, not being able to recognize when you were too emotional to be in a high performance environment. We have the whole chimp model. Steve's philosophy around that is there's nothing wrong with being emotional. There's nothing wrong with having a chimp, but you have to know when to get out of the room if that's what's going on. Don't bring your emotion into an environment where you're expecting people to perform at their very best. So that kind of management of self, absolutely critical. And then team was all about the impact that you have as a team member. You know, I think people kind of think teams are this kind of static thing that you create a great team and that's it. It's like, as you will know, having run very successful businesses, teams are like these organic, ever-changing, you know, you could bring one person in and it have a massive impact on the team. You take one person out, it can ruin a team. Do you know what I mean? So there's sort of the dynamics of a team and your role within that are crucial. So, you know, not wearing your team kit, you know, wearing a slightly different trainer, you know, criticizing the team, not buying into the sort of collective opinion, not sort of, Dave B has this really big thing about, he'll seek counsel from everyone. He'll listen to everyone's opinion. He wants to get to a collective opinion. He wants to get to a collective view of what the right direction is. But ultimately, if we can't get there, he'll make the call and then you've all got to be on the bus. Non-negotiable. If you sit in a meeting room and you agree with something and you say, yeah, okay, whilst I don't agree with it, I buy in. You know what I mean? I've given you my point of view. You've said it's not the way we're going to go, but I buy in. And then you walk out the room and you're like, I don't fucking buy that. That is one of the worst losing behaviors you can have because it's insidious and it goes around, you know, a whole organization can be destroyed by it. Yeah, it's like a virus. So it's things like that.
Fascinating. You do a lot of public speaking, right?
Haven't done it for a while now, actually. Yeah, a bit like white collar crime, I think sometimes. But yeah, it's, I used to love doing it. Like I really did used to love doing it. But I feel like the bit that I talked about, which is some of the stuff I've just said, I feel like that's a bit of my past now, and I want to build a new path for myself before I figure out telling people about it. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Same. I don't want to take talks on social media anymore if I can help it, to be honest, for the same reasons.
Yeah.
You talk a lot about Dave as well, Sir David Brailsford.
Yes.
And very fondly. I think a lot of your tweets from my stalking were centered around him and things that he was doing.
Yeah.
What are some of the key qualities of him that have made him so successful and his mindset or, you know?
Big question. I mean, him and Steve Peters are the two most influential men in my life, without a shadow of a doubt. You know, they are symbiotic because they are, I think if Dave hadn't had Steve, he maybe wouldn't be who he is. And I think if Steve hadn't met Dave, he maybe would be a slightly different version of himself. So they complement each other brilliantly. Dave is a brilliant man manager. He's incredibly visionary. He's very brave. You know, you said the thing about jumping off a cliff and hoping you get your gliders as you thought. Dave's the king of that. Dave's like, we're going to go and achieve that. And everyone's like, fuck off. And he's like, come on, let's go. And people are like, okay. And because he's so bold with it. He's so confident with it. He's an incredible leader that people would literally, I mean, I would have followed that man off the edge of a cliff. And I think that he has that quality in him, you know, he's unrelenting, you know, anyone who's worked with him, he's difficult, you know, like all geniuses are. He's a tricky guy.
Why? How maybe is a better question.
In all kinds of ways, you know, he's very, I think I've spoken about it on other interviews I've done. He can be very particular. He's very detail orientated. He wants to know all the facts before he makes a decision. He'll go after something for ages and ages and ages. You're like, oh my God, make the decision or get on with it. And then he'll make a decision that's totally off to the other side. And you're like, oh, so
doesn't make sense. It's contradiction. Or it's brilliantly genius because you think, oh, all that work that you were doing and the decision I would have made and just got on with it and made the decision would have taken us that way and that would have been the wrong way. Mm-hmm. And it's that kind of, all the way through my career with him, he would do that. And I'd be like, he's just clever like that. You know, he's ferocious appetite for learning. Unrelenting work ethic, you know, sets incredibly high standards and expects people to meet them. And all people can, right?
No, absolutely. And you know, we openly say that not all people can. There's nothing wrong with not being able to meet them. You've got to be compassionately ruthless. You know, that's what he always says, which is basically if you set a standard and if people can't meet them, then they're not in the right organization. And it's better. It's a bit like the arrogant arsehole. It's better to be honest with them and say, you know what, this isn't for you, than to kind of allow them to keep failing. Mm-hmm. I think that can be very cruel to people. You know, if they're in an environment where they're constantly trying to be better, but they just can't do it. You talked a lot about, when we were talking about winning behaviors, about this important about high work ethic. And you've expressed there that Dave has a relentless work ethic as well. Yeah. You've probably observed how this narrative around hard work has become somewhat toxic over the last couple of years. And now I almost feel bad sometimes when I'm saying that I don't know how I would have been successful in what I've done if I hadn't have worked hard. In fact, I don't really know anybody that's really successful in their discipline or their sport or whatever that doesn't work hard. So
I know we're not trying to give anyone depression and anxiety by saying that, they have to be a hustle porn star, they won't be happy. But I still can't get to the point where I will tell anybody that hard work doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It really, really matters to me. And I can't imagine and you know what? I was in the gym last night and I was thinking, sometimes words really mess people up, right? So when people say work, they think of me on in a factory, or in I don't know, in a mine hammering some rock all day. But I was thinking, because I enjoy my work so much, imagine if I just changed the words and went hard pleasure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can you have too much of hard pleasure?
It's exactly what
you know what I mean? It sounds dodgy, I know.
I was going to say, let's not go down that route.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah.
It's interesting, as you were asking me the question, I think that my response, because I similarly read something that you'd written about, you feel a bit bad that you sort of heroed the kind of, I'm working kind of 18 hours a day and I'm going at it.
Bragged about it.
Yeah, bragged about it. And I sort of think, I get it. I get why people feel like that. And I think there's a difference between being exceptionally busy and working all the hours God gives and thrashing yourself and all those sorts of things, and working really hard with purpose. They're very different. Do you know what I mean? And when you're working really hard with purpose and you're passionate about what you're doing and you love the people you're working with and you're enjoying the sort of striving for the achievement, there's no shame in that. That's, for me, that's absolutely part of motivated, ambitious people. That's what you want them to feel. And people just say, what's the work-life balance? I was like, there isn't a work-life balance. My work is my life. And I make no sort of excuse for that. I love it. I'm passionate about it. I enjoy it. It's hard pleasure. It's brilliant. And I like the challenge of it. And I chose not to have kids. So I don't have a partner. It's the passion point of my life is my work. And that's right. But that doesn't mean I need to be, not going out and seeing my mates. It doesn't mean I need to be up until midnight tapping out emails. Do you know what I mean? I take days off. I live a normal life, but I work really, really hard.
I've also struggled in the relationship department.
Yeah.
Unsurprisingly. Never, been that good at relationships. Never been able to hold a relationship down. Can't really see how it happens necessarily.
I hear you.
Talk to me about that part of, I was going to call it sacrifice, but when it's somewhat intentional and when you're aware of it, it's hard to call it sacrifice.
Just doesn't motivate me. I know that sounds awful. I'm not motivated to have somebody in my life. I'm not motivated to be like, right, I want a partner. I want that companionship. When I arrived, we were chatting about how this environment that we're all living in, actually, I love being on my own. I'm very happy in my own company. I'm very passionate about what I do. And I think that fulfills the space that maybe other people have other passions for, right? And so, it's never been a goal of mine. I've never dreamt of the white wedding. I've never wanted to, and there's never a bit of me that sits at home and thinks, I wish I had someone to sit and watch telly with, ever. That doesn't even cross my mind. And my mates are always like, do you not get lonely or do you not worry? And I'm like, no, I feel like I should because it would make you all feel better. But, and about 5 or 6 years ago, because everyone was on at me all the time, I'd did a bit of dating, did some internet, used some apps, everything else. I was like, why am I doing this? I'm doing this because society wants me to do this. I'm doing this because my mates want me to do this. This is bullshit. If it's right, it'll come. If it's not, it won't.
Did you date at all throughout the last, I guess, decade? Did you?
Here and there, but it's like, kill me, kill me now. That kind of small talk. Oh God, it's like my idea of hell on earth. Going and meeting a stranger, having small talk, slightly awkward, with kind of one end game. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, and I'll know within 2 minutes if that end game's happening. And then I'm like, I don't really need the small talk.
Yeah. You got to sit there for an hour and a half. Yeah.
We don't need to dress this up. Yeah. So it just never. Yeah, I did a little bit, but I'm not looking for that. And I think if I wanted to get married, if I wanted to get into a relationship, I could. And I'm not adverse to it, but I'm just not out seeking it. And I think you get what you look for, right?
Yeah. So other sacrifice. Stress.
I don't think it's a sacrifice, by the way. I genuinely don't.
No, I do you know what the reason why? When I was younger, I wouldn't have thought it was a sacrifice. And then I started reading all this stuff about the importance of 18, 19 and 20, even 24-year-old Steve would have thought, I don't need fucking anybody and I'll be fine on my own.
I'm a lone wolf.
Yeah. And then I fully went for the whole recluse thing. Yeah. wholeheartedly. And I was broke, so I had no choice anyway.
Yeah, you weren't Howard Hughes.
Yeah. So I was broke, and I was just not this renegade that was determined to build businesses. And then I started reading some stuff, and it talked about the importance of like meaningful connections and relationships. And I realized that I didn't really have those. And if I was going to become wildly successful, then it would just be me and my Louis Vuitton bag sat in my house. And then I started to change my perspective and thought, Steve, do you know what? You need to create a little bit more openness or balance towards that stuff. So I tried a little bit more.
But that doesn't, I have incredibly meaningful relationships and incredible connections. I have like 5 or 6 friends who are my world. Do you know what I mean? I'm incredibly close to them. Their kids are, my godchildren. I feel very, very connected. I don't feel isolated in any way. I don't feel like I'm missing out or sort of not having, and I actively participate in the lives of my friends' kids and in my friends' lives. And I think that's my connection. That's my tribe. Do you know what I mean? I would go to war for them. And I just don't think that added bit of a companion for me right now, I'm not saying not forever, but I'm not sure that bit for me is something that I need. And I think that there's a difference there. Because I do agree with you. I think you absolutely have to have connection. The human condition is to feel connected, to feel part of something, to feel, sort of that you'll have a purpose within your community. And I think having your own community and having your own tribe is crucial. I don't think that needs to be through companionship with one other human being.
There's a pressure that, as you talked about, the societal pressure, and I've got to be honest, right? I'm just going to be completely honest, because I would be really dishonest if I didn't say this. I have been guilty of, when I have a friend who is struggling in that department, feeling like I need to help them, because again, that's my own worldview pressed upon them. I'm thinking, well, in order for me to be happy, I would need that. So I need to make sure you have that thing, right? That pressure, especially for women, is intense post 30. And it causes a ton of anxiety. I see it in my direct messages from strangers. Not easy.
Well, it's interesting though. So I'm 42 now, and the pressure drops away, because I think you get to the point where people think it's rude to ask you if you're going to have kids, because they're like, can you still have kids?
Okay, right, fine.
You get to that age, right? But certainly all through my 30s, when you're going to settle down, do you not want to have children? And I feel very, very lucky that I feel the way I do. I've never really had a biological clock that's ticked, ever. And I've never felt the need for companionship of one other person. Do you see? I like I said, my tribe is very important to me, and I think that's potentially biological. So I think I'm lucky. I have friends who, they're desperate to meet someone. They're desperate to have children. They're desperate to move on to that bit of their life. And I've just never felt like that. So and I feel very lucky because of that, because I think if I'd have felt like that, my whole life would be very different.
Does nurture play a role in that? Because I know it did for me.
Yeah.
My parents were toxic for each other. Yeah. Like watching my mum scream at my dad for 7 hours a day. My mum's like this African Nigerian woman, and the decibels she's able to achieve is like gold medal worthy. She is unbelievable at shouting.
Right.
And she can do this amazingly high energetic scream for 7 hours a day without flinching. And I watched that as a kid growing up. My dad sat there, this passive English man who didn't say a word ever, and this African woman just torturing him with this loud sound. And me thinking, like, the lesson I learned was relationships are prison. And for this is the lesson I learned, like, for a man, you are trapped and it's torture. So anytime when I was young, like 16, a girl would like me and I'd chase her and I'd try and get her on the playground, whatever. The minute she said she liked me, deep feeling inside of me of like, escape quick.
Oh, wow.
So I would like come up with all these reasons why girls that I'd spent the last year pursuing, why we were not right and we couldn't be together and she needed to leave me alone. And I didn't notice that until I was like 25, and then I started to work on that part.
Okay.
But nurture, does that play a role, do you think, in your views on relationships or men or that whatever, or women or whatever?
I think it probably plays a role in my view of having kids, because my mum was adopted. Oh, wow. So my mum literally didn't know who her mum and dad was. She was kind of picked out of an orphanage by my grandparents. Wow. And never hadn't, until she had David and I, had never met anyone who looked like her. Like we all, connect to our families because we've got similar features, whatever. She'd never had that. And so my mum loves my brother and I with a kind of wonderfully oppressive kind of dominate. And it's, she just loves us with everything that she's got, because we're for a whole host of reasons, but also I think because we're the only physical, sort of biological connection she's ever had. And that love always used to scare me a little bit, not from her, but I used to think, like, I've got dogs and I worry about my dogs, and I've got like 9 godchildren. I've got 2 nephews and a niece. And the minute they get on a plane or I'm panicking, like, what if the plane crashes? What if they die? What if it's like, I can't handle it. And I'm like, Jesus, if I'd have had my own kids, I wouldn't have been able to handle that amount of love. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I think that always played quite a big part for me, that I was like, the responsibility of it, the constantly having to worry about it, all of my female friends who have kids, they live in a state of almost permanent anxiety because they worry about their kids all the time in a love way. It's like that wrong love you have for a puppy. And I don't think I've never felt that I wanted that in my life. I never felt that I needed it, and I never felt that I wanted it. I always felt quite like, no, I'm good. I've got the right amount of love going on in my life. I don't want that additional responsibility and burden in many ways of having something that is always ever present and would cause me, I think, quite a lot of anxiety.
Is that in part because you have so much responsibility and naturally, honestly, worry that comes from your other love in life, which is your career?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because that's the way I feel. It's like a kid as well. I already have one.
No, yeah, exactly. And it's why I don't think I need a companion, because I already have. I get so fulfilled from my job. I get so much from that, and so much from kind of working in and around people and having that kind of, I've got the community of my friends and the community of my work. And I think those 2 things I find very fulfilling. So the idea of having a companion or children or anything else in the mix of that didn't really ever appeal to me. And I was engaged to be married when my brother got served his ban, so 2004.
Oh, wow.
And I'd been with the guy for 7 years. And I remember moving into how we bought a house together in Shepherd's Bush, and we moved into the house. And I remember vividly putting the key in the door, turning the lock and thinking, I don't want this. I don't want this. I loved him to bits. He was an amazing guy. But I was like, I don't want this I don't want to be in a normal life with a normal husband and a house and kids. And I just didn't want it. I wanted something different. I've got a tattoo that says a life less ordinary. I just wanted to just do it differently. And I don't know where that came from, but I've had it my whole life. That kind of, I just didn't feel the need to conform to society's kind of pillars of, okay, you go to university and then you're going to get a job and then you're going to meet a guy and then you're going to get married, then you're going to have kids. I was always like, I'm just not interested.
Any idea why?
No, and I'm fascinated by it because I feel very blessed because of it. Because it's like I say, I think it's given me a freedom that a lot of people don't have.
Had you wanted it, had you wanted that, the typical life that society says people have to live and followed all the timelines and milestones, do you think you would have been able to achieve as much as you have?
I was in my head, my ego was going, I would have been amazing at it.
Really?
I'd have been like the boss. No, because I don't think you can. I'm a feminist. I'm absolutely passionate about equality. I'm passionate about women's ability. Women can do anything that men can do and should have the opportunity to do that. But I equally don't think it's possible to have it all. I really don't. I don't think you can have, and I know there are women who do, and hats off to them. I think it's you read about these women in the city who've got 5 kids and they're CEOs, and it's like, fair play to you, but I couldn't do that because I would feel constantly compromising, and I don't like compromise.
And you're obsessive a little bit in terms of what your focus?
I don't like compromising. I probably am. Obsessive makes it sound a bit like it's I'm not in control of it. I'm in control. I'm aware of what I'm doing. But it's a bit like we were talking about having a Peloton, and, I kind of feel if I'm going to go all in on my fitness and my health and get lean and everything. So for my 40th, I got down to 65 kilos. I was like a boss, and I was all over it. But then I was a bit like, oh crap, I've got to do my job as well. And I sort of feel like I'm not great at having 2 or 3 focuses. I can go at one thing and be brilliant at it. But if I start adding in layers of complexity, I can stay on top of my health, I can stay on top of my fitness, but I can't, once I start going down the right, I'm going to get super lean, I find it hard to manage my weight. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
So I don't know whether it's obsession or whether it's just I'm myopic.
Sure. Yeah. If people were to, people, they read about you online and they say, you've been the CEO of this amazing sports team. You ran your own agency before that. You're now the CEO of Belstaff. A lot of people, especially young women, are going to think that's exactly what I want to do. They're going to think that's amazing. There's always a disclaimer that comes with all of these things. What is the disclaimer in terms of the cost of the success you've achieved? What are the things that, if you would turn to me as a young, aspiring, ambitious person and say, by the way, before you follow in my footsteps, here's what you need to know.
Do you know what? I wouldn't have fun because I think I really wouldn't. I feel exceptionally blessed. I love what I do. I've loved the journey I've been on, like all the mistakes I've made. And like I said at the beginning, I've been very, very lucky to be allowed to make all kinds of mistakes and them not follow me around. It's like I've been kind of carried and supported and encouraged to fail and to try and to do stuff that other people just wouldn't have got the chance to do. So I'd be like, no, go for it. Like, don't worry about it. Like, don't worry about fucking up. Don't worry about making mistakes. Just get on with it.
What would you tell me though that I had to have in terms of my qualities? Would you say, okay, well, if you're going to follow in my footsteps, then you're going to need a little bit of this and a little bit of that?
It's so hard, isn't it, Stephen? Because you can't follow in someone's footsteps.
It's true.
It's impossible. And that's the thing I think that people, I would say you can't. You can have your own footsteps and you can go and do your own thing. And Jesus, if someone had said to me at 25, this is the career path you're going to follow, I've been like, there's no way I could tell someone how they're going to do that because it's bonkers. I explain to people, people are like, oh, tell me a bit about your background. And I hear myself saying it and I'm like, that's bonkers. So I don't think you can follow in someone else's footsteps, but I do think it's like a bit at the beginning where I was like, just be yourself, be nice to people, be approachable, take the opportunities when they're given to you, recognize that sometimes things are scary and you're going to have to do it scared, and actually change is sometimes the best thing that can happen to you. And all those things that you read in cliche memes on Instagram, they're pretty much true. You know what I mean? Yeah. It is. And you've just got to take that approach in life because you're not going to get another one.
But it's not easy, Fran. It's the stress of your job. It must be pretty intense. You're running now a big company that's, in the process of like sort of turning themselves around and kind of reinventing themselves to some degree. And I know the stuff that you have to deal with because I've dealt with it.
Yeah, but I'm not curing cancer.
But I feel like a lot of it's relative, right? Still, big problems are big problems for relative to the challenge you're facing. So like I guess, tell me about that perspective though, because a lot of people would be like, oh my God, that's a tough, you're in a tough job and there's problems every day.
But I'm so lucky, Stephen. That's the thing. I think you're lucky. I'm so lucky. Someone, an incredibly successful man bought a business 3 years ago and has said to me, it's not working very well. I really like what I've seen you do in the 2 years I've been exposed to you. Could you go and run it for me? It's like, yes, yeah, I'll go and do that. What a great opportunity. I just feel very lucky. And yeah, there are big challenges and, Brexit at the moment is bonkers and all our shops are shut because of COVID and I'm having to meet and work with new people. But, I wouldn't change it for the world. I think if you can, and this is where Steve Peters has been so powerful because he's like, it's a bit about it not defining you. You just try your best. And that was, Jim Ratcliffe actually texted me. I texted him to say, thank you very much for the opportunity. We're not friends. We don't hang out.
Number.
Exactly. We don't hang out. But I just texted him to say, thank you so much for the opportunity. This is incredible. Because I hadn't spoken to him about it at all. It was all via sort of, the chairman in the business. And he just replied and said, Fran, the only thing I can ask you to do is your best. And when you're like, the freedom of that, and that's what Dave B's always been like. He's like, you can just do your best, Fran. There's nothing more you can do in life. And I think if you release yourself of expectations and what's the standard you've got. And this is, don't get me wrong, I did not feel like this for the last 10, 15 years. This has been in the last probably 2 years that I started to realize, what is the worst that's going to happen? Like, what's the worst case scenario here? Belstaff folds, let's say, or when I was in the cycling team, we didn't win the biggest bike race or, whatever. As long as no one's dying, as long as nothing's, as long as people are okay, the people are okay, I'm kind of all right with it. It's just life.
And one of the things, I completely understand. I tend to believe that caring about anything beyond your best is like anxiety and worry and useless.
Yeah, it's like that Mark Twain quote, isn't it? It's like men will spend their whole lives worrying about stuff that's never actually going to happen. And isn't it? That's what worry is, because you're worrying about something that hasn't even happened yet. Or that sort of, there's a brilliant Brené Brown podcast where she talks about foreboding joy. And it's this idea that something really exciting is happening, but all you're thinking about is shit, what if it goes wrong? So rather than enjoying the joy of it, the kind of she uses the example that she's on the plane to go to her first Oprah appearance. And she's like, I spent the entire plane journey there worrying the plane was going to crash. Then I spent the whole car journey there worrying that I was going to make a mistake on the show or say something stupid. Then I spent the whole time in the green room worrying I was wearing the wrong outfit. And at no point did I stop and think, I'm going on Oprah. This is amazing.
Yeah.
And it's that, isn't it? It's like, I think you can burden yourself with all this responsibility and all these kind of negatives. And actually it's like, well, just what an opportunity. Why don't you try and flip it, try and see the world in a bit more of a positive light? And I feel like that's something I'm really working on for myself, because I just think, like I say, we only get one of them. You get this one opportunity. I've been very lucky. There's nothing in my life, touch wood, that has caused real trauma or, that I feel that I would go back and change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you're halfway through, that's not a bad place to be.
You took the job in the midst of COVID?
Yeah, it was October the 1st I started.
October the 1st, that's brave.
In retail.
I know, look, crazy. That's brave.
I know.
But being positive, being optimistic about it, you're coming into this business and it's, it's been smashed in all directions by all things. What's your approach? What's your strategy? What are you thinking?
I mean, at the moment, the first sort of 3 months in the business, I just wanted to get to know everyone there. So I did one-to-ones with everyone. I think it's really easy to kind of go into a business with preconceptions of what's gone wrong and what you'd fix. And I spoke to all the kind of mentors that I've worked with over the years and said, like, what would you, and they all gave me the same advice, which was speak to people, listen, don't make any rash decisions, wait, get a proper plan, but give it, the kind of 100 days piece. And initially I was a bit like, I don't need to do that. And actually you just really do, So I've just spent just trying to understand how it works. And the other thing is understand the industry. I literally knew nothing about other than I buy clothes. I didn't know anything about fashion. So and now my plan is as is always my ambition, I want to do the best possible job of it. I believe in Belstaff as a brand. I think it's an incredible brand with an incredible history. I think the product is amazing. I think the design team have been doing a brilliant job over the last 3 years, getting the product to a place that's really true to who we are as a company. And I would really love to take it to profitability and beyond. I really believe that it's possible to do that. And I think, we're lucky to have the backing of Jim and INEOS to support us through what is going to be quite a significant period of transition and change. Mm-hmm. But then I think we build the foundations for growth and go from there.
And retail's changed a lot.
Yeah, totally.
How does, I was, thinking about the high street and how, in e-commerce and the internet now, like there's, we saw Debenhams being bought by Boohoo and ASOS have just bought Topman and some of the other Arcadia brands. It's a moment of transition that's been accelerated by this pandemic. What's your thinking about the changes in retail?
I mean, God, I'm so early to it that it's,
sure.
But I mean, I think like anything, I think it's accelerated what was happening anyway, mm-hmm. right? Like the high streets were dying, people were moving online. I think the rapidity of that change has just been, it accelerated massively. So people's behavior around how they're shopping was on the cusp of quite significant change. And I think that change has flipped massively. So, people are much, much happier shopping online, even like an older generation who historically wouldn't have been. I do fundamentally believe when we all start opening up again, people are really going to want to go shopping. Do you know what I mean? I think people are going to, this idea that people aren't going to go to the shops, I'm not sure I buy it, because I think it's like, you want to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Go and do stuff. Even you might want to, Stephen.
Well, there's always hope, isn't there? I see shopping as not actually for the purpose of shopping. I see it as an experience. Yeah. And I see the internet as a place where almost the utility, and shopping as like a thing to do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I do wonder if retail will seize hold of that part and
the experiential bit.
Yeah,
exactly. I think that it's going to have to, because I don't think it's ever going to be there to be making money. So I think it's going to be about adding on the experience of the brand for people, particularly for our brand. We can create an experience and a story and a narrative that other brands maybe can't. We're 96 years old. So
we've got legacy
we've got all of that heritage that I think we can speak to. So I definitely think that experiential piece will be quite a big play over the next few years.
This is a morbid question, but I like to ask it sometimes. I think sometimes, are you scared of dying?
No. Are you?
No. I was when I was religious up until about 18 years old. And then once I realized that I was going to the same place that I came from, which was nothingness and peace, it was quite a liberating feeling. And I thought death was actually, dare I say it, not a good thing, but not something to be scared of.
Interestingly, I had when would it have been? So three years ago, I crashed my bike and landed on my head. And I got for some reason, whenever I crash my bike, I land on either my face or my head.
Oh,
and I landed on my head.
It's always brains. It's just...
I wish. And our team doctor at the time was like, because I'd got a bit of concussion, he was like, I think you should go and get a brain scan. He's very overcautious. So I went and got an MRI, and they'd made my mum come up because I don't have a husband. So I have to, that's the one downside actually to being single, is that whenever you have to have like somebody come and look after you, it's like, Mum, I'm 42 years old, but please could you come and stay at my house? So my mum had to come up because of the concussion. I wasn't allowed to go home on my own. And I got this phone call from a brain surgeon who had been given my MRI. They'd looked at my MRI and they'd found all these patches in my brain. And he was like, he rang me and he's like, are you with someone? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, we've got, yeah. And he's like, we've got,
ever, dickhead.
I know, right? I was
Just
like,
tell me.
Bedside manner needs improving. Yeah. And he said, we've got your brain scans. We've gone through them and we're seeing changes in your brain. And and you're like, but I've never had an MRI. So how are there changes? Anyway, long story short, I've got all of these unusual patterns in my brain that are like patches that could be, they were like, they could be potentially the starts of tumors. They could be just I know, right? They could, and so he went through this.
Excuse me, rude.
I had to go and so I went with my best mate actually and go and meet the brain surgeon. He talked us through it. And I mean, it was one of those hilarious and horrible situations all at the same time, because he was sort of going through, because she works in the NHS and she was like, but what else could it be? If it's not tumors, what else could it be? And he was like, well, have you ever been like a very heavy drug user? And we were both like, no. And she was like, does weed? Yeah, she was like, does weed? I was like, Lizzie, we don't need to go into this. He means heroin. She was like, oh yeah, no, we've never done heroin. And she was asking all these questions. And so basically I had about a year period where they weren't sure what it was. They still aren't. I still have them. And it's symptom based. So they're like, we could do biopsies and see what it is. And I'm like, nah, you're all right. Or if I ever develop symptoms, which would be, sort of electric pulsing or anything like that. And I think that period was quite good for me because it's probably where a lot of the positivity and the actually, do you know what, you only get one chance thing came from, because I was a bit like, shit, if I have tumors growing in my brain, that's quite intense. And what does that mean for my life? Like, what would I change? Like, what would I do differently? And I remember being sat in my living room, everyone had gone home by this point, and I sort of had my first proper other scan. It was like a 2-hour MRI, which is quite intense. Mm. And I was like, you know what? I wouldn't change anything. I would carry on living my life the way I live it now. I wouldn't change anything. I would probably go deeper and harder in some of the things that I really enjoy, because I like my job and seeing my mates. I would keep spending the money the way I spend it. I literally wouldn't change anything. And I was like, and it literally felt quite freeing. It was like, great, this is good, because I think a lot of people would get that kind of diagnosis and be like, right, shit, what do I need to do differently? And I didn't have anything that I thought, no, I don't want to change. Mm. But interestingly, my job has now changed, and I think deep down, the reason I had the chairman conversation, the reason I was willing to say yes to this opportunity at Belstaff is, had I maybe not had that incident and had all of that associated thinking and sort of bit of deep sort of soul searching, I maybe would have said, no, it's right, I'll stay at cycling. Mm. But I just thought, you know what? Fuck it. Let's go and give it a try.
What an absolute blessing that is to know that you wouldn't change anything. Yeah. I think I have this sand timer. Is it behind me somewhere? Is it there? It's usually sat behind me. But the reason I have a sand timer in my house is because it's that sort of visual. It's the only way you can really see time. At some point, I realized that I was getting older, and that you don't notice, and that you can fall into the trap of thinking, and as I think most people do, that we'll just like live forever. Yeah. And it's not until you realize that life is finite, or you have those moments, that you realize that, like at some point I'm going to die. And seeing my time pouring away is that reminder of like, is this important? And am I making the right decisions? And am I living true to myself? And I wrote a little article about that called Deathbed Thinking, which pretty much says the same thing, which is that giving you that perspective of from your deathbed, potentially, what really matters. Remarkable. I'm so inspired by your story, and every time I sit down with someone who's become a success in their career or their pursuit, it feels like there's similar themes, but so different in so many ways. What does the future hold for you, do you think? Do you know? Any ideas? Are you going to end up...
World domination, right? No,
is that... No. I would believe you if you said that. That's the funny thing. I took that seriously.
I don't know what the future holds. And I don't really mind. Like, I don't mind. I sort of, as long as my family and friends are healthy and happy, and as long as, you know, actually that's all that matters. As long as my friends and family are happy and healthy, and then I'm pretty cool with whatever the world throws at me. I'm sure it will be a laugh. It'll be fun.
Everyone else seems to need a plan.
No, there's
5-year plan, 3-year plan.
Don't get me wrong. I used to have 5-year plans, but they're all hilarious. When I go back and look at my 5-year plans, I'm like, oh, I love how ambitious I was. Like, where's that yacht?
Really good at a yacht.
I think when I was a kid, I remember actually when I set my agency up, my best mate and I set it up together, and we got a coach, and we were about 22, 23. And the coach was like, right, go off into separate rooms and write out where you want to be in 10 years time, and then come back in and read them to each other. And we were best mates. Like, we'd lived together for like 3 or 4 years, set a business up together. He was dating my best friend. We came back in, and we had them both written on a piece of paper, like holding them from each other. And he was like, right, I want to be running a successful business, earning a good salary. I want to be living in a nice house with a wife and 3 children. And I want to be healthy and happy. And I was like, oh, fuck.
You've done it, your listeners.
I was like, I want a yacht and a jet. I want to have loads of money. Yeah, I had this like really materialistic list about wanting to be like successful and a global sensation and have all this money and all this.
How old?
22, 23.
Did you have stuff growing up? Material stuff? Money?
Yeah, we were quite, my dad was in the RAF. So to begin with, you know, middle class, but then when he left to go to Hong Kong, he went into civil aviation in the kind of the glory years of the expats. So definitely very, very lucky in that I got, you know, business class travel everywhere.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so it was pretty next level, yeah.
It's incredible that you've wanted it for such a
so
long
bad.
time.
But now I wouldn't want that list now. But it was that really interesting, like, oh, okay, we want totally different things. And I didn't have partner, I didn't have kids, I didn't have a nice house anywhere. I was like, I wanted the universe. Do you know what I mean? I want to go over there and do something massive.
Well, you've smashed it, Fran, and I'm sure you've been paid well along the way for that. Money.
The money becomes irrelevant though, right? The money is just a great tool. For helping my friends and family, for doing cool stuff with people, for having experiences, I spend all the money I earn doing stuff with the people I love.
Give me an example.
Took my sister-in-law to Dubai for her 40th birthday with my best mate. We stayed on the Palm, had an amazing time. I've sort of took my brother back to Hong Kong for his 40th. I take my friends on holidays. I just go and do stuff with the people I love. I love experiences. I spend my money on experiences, going and doing stuff, seeing stuff, but always with the people I love. And none of my mates can afford to go to the hotels I go to. So I'm always like, well, I'll just pay. Because I don't want to stay in a rubbish hotel, so.
I can relate. Well, listen, thank you so much for all of your time today. It's been truly fascinating. And even, you know, researching your background and your mindset has been really, really inspiring and energizing for me. And I can relate to so many elements, and the other elements I'm just amazed and impressed by. So thank you for your time. I know you're an incredibly busy person, so it feels like an additional honor for you to have said yes to come and chat to me today. And where can people find you? I guess just, you know, these days it's pretty easy. You just Google someone's name. But
yeah, I have a private Instagram, and I'm on Twitter, but I don't really use it very often. So, right. And I'm rubbish with LinkedIn.
Well, if they want to speak to you enough, I'm sure they'll
find me.
Knocking.
They'll find me, yeah. And thank you so much for inviting me. It's been fascinating. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you.